Hello, my dears. Before I dive into the story I've never told this way before, let me just take a deep breath. Because even after all these years, it still hurts. My name is Margaret Ellis. I'm 68 years old, and the story I'm about to share is not just about betrayal. It's about rediscovery, about reclaiming dignity, about choosing myself, after being overlooked for decades. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let me take you back to the beginning, to when I still believed in fairy tales. I was born in a small town in Georgia, the kind where people left their doors unlocked and knew your grandmother's recipe for sweet tea. Life was quiet, predictable, safe. I grew up in a modest home with my father, Robert, my mother, Caroline, and 3 younger brothers. Being the only girl in the family gave me a special kind of attention. My dad treated me like a princess, and my mother, well, she was a presence, strong, confident, beautiful, the kind of woman who walked into a room and made it hers. People admired her, envied her even. She wore dresses that hugged her figure just right, kept her nails painted cherry red, and never left the house without her lipstick. She wasn't just my mother. She was the woman every man in town had a crush on, and every woman wanted to befriend, including me. I adored her. I trusted her completely, and I wanted to be just like her. Elegant, smart, admired. She used to say, "Margaret, men are easy to catch, but hard to keep. So always keep your eyes open." I thought she was just being cheeky. Looking back, I think maybe she was warning me. Anyway, growing up, I didn't dream big. I didn't want to travel the world or become a movie star. I wanted what my mum had: a husband, a family, a home. I believed in love. I believed in loyalty. I believed that if I did everything right, life would be kind to me. Then I met Richard. He wasn't from our town. He came from the city, transferred to work at the local bank. He had clean shoes, a tidy haircut, and this gentle, polished way of speaking that made him stand out. I remember the day we met like it was yesterday. I was 19, working part-time at a fabric store downtown. It was a slow Thursday, and I was folding bolts of cotton when he walked in. He looked a little lost, smiled at me, and said, "I need help picking out a gift for my mother, and I'm hopeless with colors." I laughed, the nervous, flirty kind of laugh, and helped him choose a soft lavender fabric. We talked for almost an hour, and before he left, he asked if I'd like to grab ice cream with him on Sunday after church. Now, back then, that kind of invitation was a big deal. It wasn't just casual. It meant something. And I remember walking home that evening, my cheeks flushed, thinking, this could be it. And in many ways, it was. Richard was different from the boys I had known. He opened doors. He remembered what flavor of pie I liked. He wrote me little notes and left them inside my apron pockets. My mother, surprisingly, seemed smitten too, not in a romantic way, or so I thought, but proud. She said, "He's got ambition. Hold on to him," I thought. She was being supportive. I thought she was happy for me. 6 months later, Richard proposed. And a year after that, we got married. It was a beautiful spring day. The church was full of flowers and friends. I wore a simple white dress, nothing too fancy. We didn't have much money, but I felt like a queen. Richard looked at me like I was his whole world, and my mother, she cried. She really did. Tears rolling down her cheeks as she handed me my bouquet. "You're not my little girl anymore," she whispered. If I had known then what those tears really meant. But I didn't. I believed them. I believed her. Richard and I moved into a small house just outside of town. We worked hard, saved every penny, and built a life. We had 2 children, Brian and Emma. I became a teacher. Richard was promoted to bank manager, and my mother was always around helping with the kids, cooking, cleaning, offering advice even when I didn't ask for it. And for a long time, I thought I had it all. A loving husband, beautiful children, a mother who was always there for us. Little did I know, the two people I trusted the most were sharing something behind my back that would shatter my world. But that is a story for the next chapter. Asterisk, they say. Hindsight is 20/20. And when I look back now, the signs were all there. But at the time, I was blind. Blind because I loved her. Blind because she was my mother. Blind because I wanted so badly to believe she only wanted the best for me. My mother, Caroline, wasn't your typical small-town mom. While other women wore aprons and talked about casserole recipes, she wore silk blouses and read fashion magazines. From New York. Even after losing my father, she never let herself go, as people said. Her nails were always manicured. Her perfume was always noticeable, but not overpowering, and her hair always styled to perfection. It didn't matter if she was running to the grocery store or attending a funeral. She looked flawless. Growing up, I admired that about her. She had this glow, this magnetism. People listened when she spoke. Men stood up straighter in her presence. Women took mental notes of her every move. She made you feel like you were lucky just to sit next to her at dinner, and after I got married. She brought that same energy into my home. She'd stop by unannounced, arms full of groceries, or with a fresh pie she just happened to bake. "I thought you could use a break, dear," she'd say, handing me the kitchen towel before taking over the stove like it was her rightful domain. At first I was grateful. Having her around was comforting. She helped with the kids, folded laundry, gave me time to rest. Richard would come home and smile. "Your mum's a gem." Yes, a gem. A very sharp one. But even then, there were things that didn't sit quite right. The way she complimented Richard. Not just the innocent, he's handsome kind of way, but something, ... extra. "I don't know how you keep your hands off him," she once whispered while pouring wine, her tone playfully scandalous. I laughed awkwardly and brushed it off. And Richard? Well, he always seemed flattered by her attention. I chalked it up to their bond. "She's like a second mum to me," he'd say, and I believed him. But slowly, her presence became more than just helpful. It became constant, overbearing, like a shadow that wouldn't move. No matter how brightly the sun shone, she had keys to our house, came and went as she pleased, often showing up when I wasn't home. Sometimes, I'd return from work to find her rearranging my living room, or folding Richard's shirts the right way. And when I'd ask why she didn't call first, she'd smile that sugary smile and say, "Margaret, honey, this is our home. I want to help you." There was no arguing with her. I began to notice that Richard started dressing differently, a little sharper. He started wearing cologne I hadn't bought him. Once I found an expensive shirt in his closet, never seen before. He said it was a gift from a client. I didn't question him, because why would I? He was my husband. She was my mother. I trusted them both completely. Still, the feeling in my gut wouldn't go away. There was something there, something I couldn't put into words, like watching a play where the actors are smiling, but you just know something's wrong with the script. One night, after a family dinner, I saw her hand brush his a little too long as they cleared the table. They laughed, nothing scandalous, just a shared joke. But I saw it, that flicker, that moment of something unsaid, and I told myself, "You're tired, you're overthinking. Don't be ridiculous, because if I let myself believe it, if I really looked at what I was feeling, then everything would unravel." So I buried the doubt, pushed it deep down. The kids were growing up. Emma started high school. Brian had his first crush. Life was full, busy, demanding, I had no room for suspicion, only routines. But my mother didn't fade into the background, as most grandmothers do. She took up more space, emotionally, physically, even spiritually. She inserted herself into every decision, every plan. "Let me talk to Richard about that. Dear," she'd say about something as simple as buying a new sofa. Or, "Richard agrees with me, don't you, darling?" She'd coo, and he'd nod. Eyes not meeting mine. It was subtle, strategic, and I was too naive to see it. She controlled him, in ways I couldn't, and I blamed myself for that. Maybe I wasn't exciting enough. Maybe I'd become too tired. Maybe I wasn't keeping his attention. These were the thoughts that crept into my mind at night. Long after everyone had gone to bed, I started changing how I dressed. Buying new lipstick, making his favorite meals more often. But no matter what I did, the distance between us grew, and she, my mother, was always right there, filling the space I no longer could. If someone had told me then, "Margaret, your mother is sleeping with your husband," I would have laughed in their face, because that's unthinkable, right? Unimaginable. But sometimes, what we refuse to imagine is exactly what destroys us. There's something funny about silence. It's quiet, until it isn't. Sometimes, it screams louder than words ever could. That's how it was for me during those years, those long, hollow years where I knew something was wrong, but I didn't have the courage to name it. Looking back now, I see those years as the time when the glass started cracking. Hairline fractures. Small ones at first, barely visible, easy to deny. But every small fracture is a warning, and I ignored them all. It started with Richard's schedule. He used to come home from the bank at 6 sharp. Every day, dinner at 6:30. A quiet routine, predictable, but then came the late meetings. At first, once a week, then twice, then almost every night. When I asked about them, he'd kiss my forehead and say, "Bank business is changing, Maggie, more to manage these days." And I believed him. Because when you've built a life with someone, you want to believe them. But then came the second crack. He started showering the moment he walked in the door. Didn't greet the kids. Didn't ask about my day. Straight to the bathroom. Door locked, and the scent of unfamiliar perfume followed him in. I asked once, trying to be playful, "Who's the lucky lady who wore that today?" He laughed. "A new client. Wears too much. I need to wash it off before it sticks." I smiled, but something inside me shifted. Just slightly done, came my mother. She began showing up more and more, but not in her usual relaxed way. She was dressed like she was going to a dinner party. High heels, silk scarves, new perfume. I asked where she got it. She'd never been one for spending money on luxury brands. She said, "A friend from Atlanta sent it. You know how people love spoiling me." That made me laugh. "But not in the way it used to," she began, wearing her hair differently, softer, looser, like she wanted to look younger. I didn't think much of it at the time, or maybe I didn't want to, but it was another crack. The next one, family dinners. She started coming early, too early. She'd help me cook, but her attention always drifted toward Richard. Serve him first. She'd laugh at every joke, even when no one else found it funny. She started sitting next to him, instead of across the table, as she always had before. And once, just once, I caught her hand brushing his thigh under the table. I froze. She quickly pulled back and made a joke about her arthritis. I laughed, but inside, I couldn't breathe. Still, I told myself, she's your mother, and he's your husband. Stop being paranoid, but things kept piling up. My mother began referencing things. Richard had said to her things he'd never told me. He mentioned how stressed he's been lately. She said once, I asked when they talked, and she waved it off. Oh, we chat. He calls sometimes after work. Nothing big. Richard confirmed it when I asked. Your mom just worries, Maggie. I pick up when she calls. You know how she is. Yes, I knew exactly how she was. But I also knew that when someone hides a knife behind their back, they tend to smile even brighter. One night, Richard came home with lipstick on his shirt collar. It was faint, almost invisible. But not to me. I raised an eyebrow, he said. An older lady at the bank hugged me. She wears that red. I didn't even notice. And maybe I would have believed that if my mother hadn't started wearing that exact same shade just the week before. Crack. Another day, I found a single gold earring on the passenger seat of Richard's car. Not mine. I held it up, waiting for his explanation. He blinked. I don't know. Maybe it belonged to one of the tellers. I nodded. Later that week, my mother showed up for dinner. And wouldn't you know it, she was wearing the matching one. Crack. I felt like a detective in my own home, chasing ghosts and shadows, catching whispers that no one else seemed to hear. And still, I said nothing. Why? Because I wasn't ready to face the truth. Because if I spoke it out loud, if I let myself believe that the man I had loved for 3 decades, and the woman who gave me life, could betray me in the worst way, then the world I had built would collapse. So instead, I smiled. I cooked dinner. I kissed Richard goodnight. I hugged my mother and told her I loved her. But deep inside, the silence was no longer silent. It was screaming, and I started to listen. You know that moment when your whole world shifts in a single breath? Not slowly, not gradually, but all at once, like a lightning strike in the middle of a clear blue sky. I had that moment, and I remember every second of it. It was a Tuesday in April. Spring had just begun to bloom. I remember the lilacs outside my daughter's house were in full color, the air still holding on to the last chill of winter. Emma had just had her first baby, my first grandchild. I'd been staying over to help her recover, doing what mothers and grandmothers do, folding onesies, warming bottles, rocking tiny cries to sleep. That morning, she insisted I go home early. Mum, we've got it, she said. You need to rest a little. Go take a long bath, read your book, do something for you. And for once, I listened. I drove home quietly, windows cracked, letting the breeze play with my hair. The streets were empty, middle of the week, middle of the day. I was smiling when I pulled into the driveway, happy, content. That was the last time I'd ever feel that kind of peace. The front gate was unlocked. That struck me as odd. Richard was home. That day, he'd taken the day off, said he needed a mental break. I figured maybe he'd stepped outside and forgot to lock it. No big deal. I stepped inside silently, almost tiptoeing, like I wanted to surprise him. Maybe I'd find him in the kitchen, making coffee, humming like he used to, but the house was too quiet, too still. Then I heard it. Laughter. Not just any laughter. Her laughter. My mother's laugh. The one that had echoed through my entire childhood. That soft, knowing chuckle she used when she was most pleased. It was coming from our bedroom. I froze at first. My brain tried to make it logical. Maybe she was dropping something off. Maybe they were watching something funny. Maybe, but no. The tone of it, the intimacy. It didn't feel like someone watching a sitcom. It felt like ... something else I should have knocked. I should have called out. But something in me, something deeper than instinct, made me reach for the doorknob instead. And slowly, silently, I turned it. The door creaked open, and what I saw, my mother, my husband, entwined in our bed. The same sheets I had changed that morning before leaving for Emma's. The same pillows I had fluffed. The same blanket I had folded at the end. They didn't see me. Time stopped. Everything, the air, the sound, my heartbeat, disappeared. It was like my body disconnected from my mind. Like I had stepped outside myself and was watching from across the room. My mother was laughing softly into his chest. Richard was holding her the way he used to hold me. And there it was, not just a betrayal, but a blasphemy. In my home, in my marriage, in the heart of the life I had built. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't slam the door or curse their names. I simply closed the door, just as quietly as I had opened it. And I walked out of the house. I don't remember where I went. I walked for hours, past the church, past the grocery store, past the park where I used to push Brian and Emma on the swings. I walked until the sun began to set, until the ache in my feet distracted me from the ache in my chest, and when I came home, there they were, in the living room, watching TV like nothing had happened. Richard looked up and said, "Where have you been, honey?" With that soft concern in his voice, the same voice he used when I had the flu, and my mother. She stood up, smiling, holding a little container. "I made your favorite," she said sweetly. "Lemon custard. Thought I'd surprise you." And I sat down between them. I smiled and I said, "How lovely." But in my heart, a switch had flipped. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to break. I was going to destroy them, piece by piece, slowly, quietly, just like they had done to me. That was the day I stopped being their puppet. The day I realized that kindness, when unreciprocated, becomes weakness. And I was done being weak. They had no idea that their betrayal had just awakened a side of me I didn't even know existed. They say silence is golden, but after that day, for me, silence became a weapon. It wasn't the silence of peace. It was the silence of war. I didn't confront them, not yet, because I knew if I exploded in that moment, if I screamed and cried and demanded answers, they'd lie. They'd spin their web, and I wouldn't get what I wanted. What did I want? I wanted them to feel everything I had felt. Shock, humiliation, pain, and I wanted them to feel it in front of everyone, so I chose silence. The next morning I made breakfast. Pancakes, bacon, coffee, just the way Richard liked it. He kissed me on the cheek. "Thanks, babe," he said, flipping through the newspaper like nothing was wrong. My mother came by later with fresh flowers, roses. She arranged them on the dining table, humming as she worked. I stood there, watching her. The same hands that used to braid my hair, now arranging a bouquet in the home she had defiled. And yet, I smiled. "Oh, Mom," I said, "you always know how to make this place feel alive." And just like that, I slid deeper into the performance. I started playing the role of the devoted wife again, cooking his favorite meals, laughing at his jokes, even wearing the perfume he bought me for our 10th anniversary, the one I had stopped using years ago. I became someone he trusted. Again, why? Because I needed access. I needed to watch, to observe, to learn their rhythms. They say revenge is best served cold. Well, I wasn't serving it cold. I was serving it frozen. I began keeping a journal. Times, dates, conversations, odd behavior. I noted every late night Richard claimed to be at work, every errand my mother suddenly had on a Wednesday afternoon. I wasn't just documenting betrayal. I was collecting evidence. It wasn't about confronting them anymore. It was about building a case, because I knew something. One day, when I was ready, I would burn it all down. And I would do it with style. During those silent days, I also made changes. Small ones they didn't even notice. I added a lock to my personal drawer. I moved some of our joint funds to a new account, one Richard didn't know about. I visited a lawyer, quietly, told him everything. Except the affair. We're just discussing options, I told him. He believed me. Meanwhile, my mother continued her performance too. She'd stop by, bring groceries, give parenting advice I didn't need, all with a smile that now looked like a wolf in pearls. Sometimes, when Richard left the room, she'd linger behind and touch my arm. "You really are lucky, Margaret," she'd say. "Not every man is as loyal as Richard." And I'd smile back. "Yes, Mom, I know exactly how lucky I am." At night, I lay beside him in bed. He'd turn over, his back facing me. Just like always. No affection. No warmth, but now, I wasn't sad about it. I was calculating, thinking, planning. My mind worked like a machine. What did I need to hurt them most? What could I do that neither of them would ever recover from? And the answer came to me one night. While folding laundry, the vow renewal, it had been something I suggested a year earlier, a 30-year celebration. At the time, Richard brushed it off. Why spend money to say what we already know? But after the affair, I brought it up. Again that's time, with a twist in my voice. I think it would really mean something. To show everyone how far we've come, especially for the kids. Don't you think so? Richard hesitated. But eventually, he agreed. So did my mother. Of course she did. She offered to help plan it. Said it would be just like the old days. She had no idea she was helping plan her own funeral, a social one. At least the silence continued for weeks. On the outside, everything looked picture perfect. We hosted barbecue, attended church as a couple, smiled for family photos. But inside, I was boiling, and I let it simmer because some betrayals deserve more than confrontation. They deserve a stage, and I was going to give them one. Asterisk, you'd think the hardest part of betrayal is catching them in the act. But it's not. The hardest part is realizing how long you've been blind. It's waking up one morning and understanding that everything you thought was real was built on lies. After the day I found them together and chose silence, something inside me shifted permanently. No more doubt. No more excuses. Now I wanted the truth. And the truth. Oh, it was so much worse than I thought. I began with the past, not the present, not the lipstick, not the glances or perfume. No, I went back. Back to before the late-night meetings, before the custard surprises, before the cracks in the glass. I started looking through old boxes, ones I hadn't opened in years. Letters, notes, birthday cards, everything we had collected over decades. One night, while digging through a storage bin in the attic, I found a photo album. It wasn't one I remembered making. The pictures were from our early marriage. Dinners, parties, Sunday barbecues. And in almost every photo, there she was. My mother, always close to Richard, always touching his arm, always in frame. Now, back then, I wouldn't have noticed. But now, I couldn't unsee it. In one photo, a picnic from the summer of '97, my mother's hand was resting on Richard's knee. Not in a mother-in-law way, in a possessive way. My stomach turned. I flipped through faster. In another, from Christmas that same year, she was sitting on the arm of the couch, next to him, not me. I was off to the side, holding Emma as a toddler, and he was smiling up at her, like she was the only person in the room. I slammed the album shut. That night, I didn't sleep. My mind raced. How long had it been going on? Was it before we married? Was he ever truly mine? And then the real question, was Emma even his child? I shook that thought away. I wouldn't let it in. Not yet. The next morning, I went into Richard's office while he was showering. He kept a locked drawer there. Always had. Said it was for tax documents. But I had the spare key. I'd never used it before, until now. Inside, I found a stack of envelopes neatly bundled and labeled by year. They weren't tax documents, they were letters. Old letters, some dating back to before we were even engaged. I opened the first one and felt my world tilt. It was from my mother, "Dearest Richard." That's how it started. I couldn't read past the first paragraph without shaking. She talked about how hard it was to be so close to him and not touch, how she couldn't believe he was marrying her daughter. Her daughter. Me. There were dozens of letters, some romantic, some cruel. One said, "She'll never understand you the way I do." Another, "I wish it were me you were building that home with." And the worst one, it was dated a week after our wedding. She wrote, watching. "You put that ring on her finger broke me. But I know your heart belongs to me." I wanted to scream, to tear them all apart, to set them on fire and never think about them again. But I didn't, because those letters, they were my proof, not just of betrayal, but of premeditation. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't two lonely people falling into sin. This was a plan, a long, deliberate, secret plan to take my life and make it theirs, and I had lived in it like a fool. I put the letters back carefully, took photos of each one. I went to my lawyer the next day with a flash drive in my purse and fire in my chest. He didn't ask questions. He just said, "Whatever you're planning, make sure you stay clean. Make sure you stay smart." And I did. That night, I invited my mother for dinner. She wore her favorite red blouse. Richard made grilled chicken. Emma and Brian weren't home, thank God. We sat at the table, laughing like nothing had changed. She reached for the wine I always loved. "This Merlot," she said, twirling the glass between her fingers. "It tastes like home." I smiled, and I said, "Then drink up, Mom, because home is about to taste very different." She laughed, not understanding, but I knew, oh, I knew. The pieces were falling into place, and the best part, they had no idea I was watching them walk into the fire. Revenge isn't loud, not the real kind. The best revenge is silent, calculated, icy, and that's exactly what I became. Ice, not tears, not screaming, not begging. Ice, after I found the letters in Richard's drawer. After reading my mother's handwriting, calling my marriage a mistake in claiming my husband as hers. Something inside me died, but something else was born. Clarity. I didn't want them to suffer quietly. I didn't want to simply leave and let them enjoy the wreckage. No, I wanted them to feel what I had felt, the loss, the shock, the shame. I wanted the world to see them for what they truly were. So I began planning, and the first step, I needed leverage. Let me tell you something I learned in all my years as a wife, a mother, and now a woman scorned. People hide things, not just in closets, but in contracts. So I started with our assets. Richard and I had a shared home, a few investments, and a modest farmhouse that had been in my name since my father passed, a piece of land on the edge of town where we kept a garden and sometimes stayed on weekends. It was peaceful, quiet, untouched. I made an appointment with a notary, told Richard we needed to update some estate planning just in case anything ever happened to us. He didn't even blink. He signed whatever I handed him. Like always, what he didn't realize was that I was transferring every last co-owned asset back into my name, including the bank account we opened when Emma was born. I moved most of our liquid money into an account under my name alone. Then I changed the passwords to our joint accounts. He never noticed because I told him the bank was updating their security. Next, I needed evidence, not the kind hidden in letters. I needed something that could speak louder. I bought a small hidden camera, one of those discreet ones that look like a photo frame. I placed it in the hallway. pointed straight toward the door of our bedroom. The next few weeks, I caught more than I ever imagined. Richard would call her during lunch breaks. She'd arrive before I came home, let herself in with the key I had forgotten she still had. Sometimes they kissed in the hallway. Other times they disappeared into our bedroom. It was all on tape. Once I had enough footage, I stored it in the cloud, backups, everywhere, labeled under random names like tax_forms_1994, just in case. But still, I wanted something bigger, something public, something unforgettable. And that's when the idea came. Years ago, I had once dreamed of renewing our vows, a big celebration, 30 years of marriage, family and friends, a reminder of the life we had built. Of course, back then, it was about love. Now, it would be about revelation. So I brought it up again. I remember sitting beside him on the porch. "Richard," I said, voice soft and sweet, "I've been thinking. Maybe we should do a vow renewal this year." He looked up from his phone, caught off guard. "Really? Yes. We've come so far, through so much. I think it would mean a lot to the kids." He smiled slowly. "Yeah," he said. "That might be nice." He kissed my hand, and right then I saw it. The arrogance. He thought I was still fooled, still his little loyal wife. And oh, how beautiful it was to know I had already won. The next day, I told my mother. She lit up like a child. "I'll help plan it," she said. "I've always wanted to see you to celebrate properly." I wanted to laugh in her face, but I didn't. Instead, I handed her a clipboard with ideas, catering, flowers, invitations. She dived into the task like it was her own wedding, and maybe, in her delusional mind, it was. But every call she made, every table she picked, every song she suggested, she was building the stage of her own humiliation. I started creating a video tribute for the event. Photos through the years, I told them. A surprise for the guests. What they didn't know was that halfway through the slideshow, the sweet pictures would fade to black dot, and in their place would appear footage. Footage of betrayal. Footage of them kissing, touching, laughing, proof, unedited. Undeniable, that would be the final act, the grand finale. I could feel the moment already, the gasps, the horror, the way their faces would drop in real time as the room turned against them. It would be beautiful, and the best part, they would never see it coming, because I was still making breakfast, still folding laundry, still smiling at their lies. They thought they were ahead, but I was always one step further. Asterisk, if revenge were a stage play, this would be the final act. I've set up the part where every spotlight is placed, every line rehearsed, and the audience waits in blind anticipation. And me. I was the director, producer, and star. The vow renewal was set for mid-July. Summer, golden and warm. The perfect mask for what was really coming. We chose the town's community center, a charming, rustic building with ivy crawling up its brick walls and twinkling lights strung from the wooden beams. It had hosted decades of weddings, baby showers, anniversaries. And now it would host justice. My mother dove headfirst into planning. She took over the florist selection, menu tasting, and seating chart with the passion of a bride, not a grandmother. At one point she said, "Margaret, maybe we should even get a custom cake with the words 'Forever Us' on top. Forever Us. Imagine that." I nodded, as if moved. "That's beautiful, Mum. I should have won an Oscar." Meanwhile, Richard stayed, detached as usual. He agreed with whatever I said, barely involved beyond signing checks. The irony was almost too much to handle. He thought I was doing this for him, a celebration of our love. He had no idea that this would be the last day he'd ever feel respected. Now, let me tell you how I set the scene. Every inch of it, I arranged the guest list myself. Old friends, family, people from church, even a few from the bank. All the people who had admired us as a couple, who'd called us solid, reliable, the picture of lasting marriage. I wanted them there. I wanted them to see that the venue had a projector and screen already built in. Perfect. I'm preparing a surprise tribute video, I told everyone. And while I worked on the actual slideshow of memories, wedding photos, baby pictures, vacation clips, I also began editing the truth. Hidden camera footage, softened and color-corrected. No sound, just clear images. Them, in my home, in our bed, in my life. I set it all to music. A soft piano version of Unchained Melody. Sentimental, slow, devastating. I hired a professional editor to polish. It told him it was a symbolic film about heartbreak and rebirth. He never asked questions. Now, the timing. I scheduled the video to play after the dinner, just before the cake cutting. The emotional moment, I called it. The moment when people would cry over a beautiful marriage. Instead, they'd watch it disintegrate before their eyes. 2 nights before the event, I stayed up until 2 a.m. rehearsing what I'd say. Not a speech. A statement. It would be short, sharp, lethal. The morning of the event arrived like any other. Richard kissed me on the cheek before shaving. My mother was already at the venue, organizing flowers, smiling at vendors, sipping coffee. From her favorite gold-trimmed mug, I wore my old wedding dress. It still fit. Not perfectly, but enough to remind me of who I used to be. The woman full of hope, full of belief in happy endings. I curled my hair and added a soft touch of blush, looking in the mirror. I whispered to myself, "You're not here to cry. You're here to end it." The guests arrived at 6. The room buzzed with laughter and clinking glasses. People hugged us, toasted to our beautiful marriage, and talked about how lucky we were. My mother, in a champagne-colored gown, played the part of the proud matriarch. Richard, well, he just floated, smiling, shaking hands, holding my waist like I still belonged to him. We served dinner, we danced, we smiled for photos. Then the lights dimmed. "Please direct your attention to the screen," the DJ said. I stood beside Richard. He took my hand. I smiled at him one last time. The first part of the video began. Pictures of our wedding day. The kids growing up, vacations, Christmas mornings. It was beautiful, emotional, sweet. People wiped away tears. And then the screen went black. The music shifted slightly. Slower, then came the footage. At first, silence, then gasps. There she was. My mother, walking into our home while I was away. Then Richard, opening the door, smiling. Then the kiss, the embrace, the trail of clothes on the floor, mouths opened. Some guests turned away. Others stared, stunned. Richard froze beside me. My mother, from across the room, stood paralyzed. Then I stepped forward. "Thank you all for coming," I said calmly into the microphone. "I wanted to celebrate 30 years of truth. And today, you've seen it." I looked at my mother too, the woman who gave me life, and then tried to take it from me. "Enjoy your silence. That's all you'll have now." Then I turned to Richard. "You were my husband, my partner, my past, but today I reclaim my future." And with that, I walked out, head, high, shoulders back, leaving behind the ruins they created. There's a strange kind of silence that follows a public explosion. It's not peace, it's not calm, it's the stunned, shivering stillness of people watching the wreckage and wondering what to say. That's what the room felt like after the video played. No applause, no laughter, just shock, forks frozen in midair, hands covering mouths. eyes darting between me, Richard, and my mother. I could still feel Richard's hand in mine when the first image of them appeared on the screen, and I felt him jerk as though electrocuted. He let go. Good, my mother had gone completely pale. She was standing near the dessert table, clutching her clutch purse like it could somehow shield her from the shame. I walked off the stage, slow, poised, like nothing had happened, but my heart was racing like a drum. I didn't need to scream. The truth had already done all the screaming for me. As I reached the exit, I heard whispers spreading like wildfire. Was that real? Did you see her mother? Oh my God, poor Margaret. She planned this the whole time. Yes, I did. I stepped outside into the warm night air. The sound of cicadas was loud. So loud, but inside me, there was quiet, not numbness, not emptiness, just a silence I had earned. Moments later, the doors opened behind me. Emma, my daughter, ran out. "Mum," she called, panic in her voice. What was that? I turned to her, and for a moment, I wanted to shield her, to tell her everything would be okay, but that wasn't the truth. She deserved the truth too. "It's real," I said. "I'm sorry you had to see it that way, but I needed you to know." Tears welled up in her eyes. She grabbed my hands, shaking her head. How could she? How could he? I didn't have the answer. Some questions don't deserve explanations. Only endings. Soon after, others began coming outside. My best friend Lillian hugged me tight. Margaret, that was the bravest thing I've ever seen. I didn't feel brave. I just felt finished. I looked back through the glass doors and saw Richard alone now, standing near the screen, which had frozen on an image of my mother walking into our home. No one was talking to him. Even his own brother had walked away. My mother, however, had disappeared, vanished, like shame does when it's cornered. Someone later told me she ran to her car and drove off. Not a word. Not a goodbye. Not even a fight. Just gone. Like a thief who realizes she's been caught on tape. Good riddance. As for Richard, he tried to follow me. "Margaret," he called, jogging after me as I reached my car. "Wait, please, let me explain." I turned slowly and looked him in the eyes. The same eyes I once trusted with my life. "There's nothing you can say that I haven't already seen," I told him. "You're not sorry. You're just exposed," he stammered. "It was a mistake." "I didn't mean no," I interrupted. "You meant it every time, and I meant this." I opened the car door, but our family. "The kids," he tried again. "You destroyed that." I just made it visible. And then I left him there, standing in the parking lot of a vow renewal turned war zone, wearing the suit I had ironed just hours earlier, now soaked in sweat and disgrace. Night, I didn't cry. Not once. I poured a glass of wine, took off my dress, sat on my back porch, and listened to the night breathe. It was the first time in years that I felt free. The calls started rolling in the next morning, some with pity, some with disbelief, but most with one simple sentence. I had no idea. "I'm so sorry, I wasn't angry at them." Betrayal is quiet. It wears polite smiles and matching holiday sweaters. No one sees it until you show them. Emma didn't speak. To her grandmother for weeks, Brian was furious, not just at them, but at himself for not noticing. And Richard, well, he tried to save face. He called. He sent flowers. He even left a handwritten note on my porch saying, "Let's talk." But there was nothing left to talk about. The divorce papers were already being drawn, and my lawyer, he was delighted with the evidence I provided. Property, mine. Savings, mine. Farmhouse, mine. Reputation, untouched, his. Burned to the ground. As for my mother, she left town, moved in with a cousin in another state, as I heard through the grapevine. Word spread fast. She was no longer the elegant Caroline. She was that woman, the one who betrayed her daughter, the one who lost everything. After the explosion, after the dust settles and the silence sinks in, there comes the part no one really talks about. The after, not the revenge, not the scandal, but the quiet, personal reclaiming of a life. That's what I had to face. And let me tell you, it wasn't easy. For the first time in 30 years, I woke up alone. No snoring beside me, no coffee brewing in the kitchen, no footsteps pacing the hall as my mother dropped in to critique my curtains. It was just me. Me and the hum of a house that suddenly felt 10 times bigger than it ever had. But I wasn't afraid of the silence anymore. It was mine now. I started by decluttering. Not just the junk drawers, but the ghosts, the photos, the old anniversary cards, the knickknacks she gifted us over the years. Gone. I donated what I could, burned what I needed to, and boxed up the rest, not out of nostalgia, but to bury the remains. Next, I painted. It might sound silly, but there's something healing about putting a new color on your walls. I went with light yellow in the kitchen, warm, hopeful, soft blue in the bedroom, peaceful, like the ocean I used to dream of visiting, and I made that dream real too. 3 weeks after the divorce was finalized, I took myself to the coast. Alone, I checked into a little inn by the water. No schedule, no one to report to, just the sound of waves and the feeling of the sun on skin that had long forgotten how to soak it in. One morning, I stood barefoot on the beach, coffee in hand, and just breathed, and I cried. Not out of grief, but out of release, because I had survived. And more than that, I had won. Financially. I was secure. My lawyer made sure of that. Socially, I wasn't just respected, I was admired. People would stop me at the grocery store, at church, even at the pharmacy. Margaret, I don't know how you did it. You're so strong. If it had been me, I would have crumbled. But I didn't, because I had something they hadn't taken from me, my mind and my children. Emma came over one Sunday, holding her baby girl, tears in her eyes. "Mom," she whispered, "I'm sorry. I should have seen it. I should have said something." I held her close and said what I now truly believed. You saw what you were supposed to see. We all do, until we're ready to see more. Brian took longer. He was angry. Not at me, but at the whole mess. It took time for him to talk about it. But one day, he called. "Mum," he said, "I don't know how you did what you did, but I'm proud of you, really proud." And that meant more than any justice I could have served. As for Richard, well, he ended up moving into a rental apartment. He lost his job. The scandal had spread too far. Apparently, clients didn't trust a banker whose private life looked like a soap opera. He tried reaching out a few more times, emails, a letter, but I never responded. He didn't deserve closure. He didn't even deserve my anger anymore. My mother, gone, out of state, out of reach, and out of my heart. I used to miss her. Even after everything, there were nights I'd hear a song she loved, or smell cinnamon and remember her baking. But now I remember the truth, and I choose peace over memory. I began volunteering at the library again. I joined a gardening club. I even started taking watercolor classes. Not because I wanted to become someone new, but because I wanted to return to the version of me that existed before the lies, before the betrayal, before I made their happiness more important than my own. And slowly, piece by piece, I did. I wasn't Richard's wife anymore. I wasn't Caroline's daughter. I wasn't a victim or a scandal or a topic at someone's dinner table. I was Margaret Ellis, a woman who had been burned and rebuilt. And let me tell you something. There's nothing more powerful than a woman who knows her worth. I don't know what comes next. Maybe I'll travel more. Maybe I'll write a book. Maybe I'll just sit on this porch, watch the sunset, and sip my tea, knowing that I fought for myself. But whatever I do, it'll be for me, and that, my dear, is the greatest revenge of all. There's a moment in every woman's life when she realizes something life-changing, that walking away isn't weakness, it's power. That moment came to me not on the night I exposed them, not when I signed the divorce papers, not even when I watched Richard's life collapse like a house of cards. It came much later. I was sitting in my backyard, the same backyard where my kids once ran barefoot, the same yard where I'd hosted birthdays, anniversaries, even holidays with her. With my mother pretending everything was whole. I had a glass of iced tea in one hand and a book in the other. The sun was warm, the breeze was soft, and for the first time in decades, no one was demanding anything from me, and that's when I felt it. The deep, grounding power of peace. I hadn't realized how heavy my life had become, how long I had carried the weight of other people's happiness, how often I had dimmed myself so others could shine. I had believed for too long that love meant sacrifice, that being a good wife meant silence, that being a good daughter meant loyalty, no matter how cruel the betrayal. But that version of love, that version kills women like me, slowly, quietly, with a smile on its face. So I let her go, not just physically, not just through distance or silence. I let my mother go from my soul. I forgave myself for not seeing the truth sooner, for trusting the wrong people, for loving someone who saw me as disposable. And then I let him go. The man I once built a life with, who promised forever but gave me deception, who looked into my eyes and kissed me on the same lips that kissed her hours later. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean pretending it didn't happen. It means refusing to let it define you. People ask me all the time now, Margaret, would you do it all over again, the same way? And I say absolutely, because I found myself in the fire. I discovered a strength I didn't know lived inside me, a voice I had silenced for too long, a courage I now carry like armor. Sometimes the greatest act of love is choosing yourself, not once, not just when it's convenient, but every day. And if my story has taught you anything, I hope it's this: never ignore your instincts, never hand over your worth for someone else's comfort, and never, ever apologize for protecting your peace. You deserve more than survival. You deserve freedom. Now, if you're listening to this and you've been through something similar, betrayal, heartbreak, humiliation, I want you to hear me clearly. You are not broken. You are not too late. And you are not alone. There is life after betrayal. There is joy after grief. There is power in starting again. And sometimes, the ending you never wanted becomes the beginning you truly needed. I'm not telling you to get revenge. I'm telling you to rise, to choose yourself with the same passion you once gave to people who didn't deserve you. I'm an old woman now. I have more grey hairs than secrets, more scars than trophies. But I'm proud of every single one, because they mean I lived. I fought, and I walked away with my soul intact. So if you're standing at the edge, unsure, afraid, ashamed, take it from me, you are stronger than you think, and it is never too late to walk away. If this story moved you, if it made you feel seen, heard, or even just a little less alone, I invite you to join me. Leave a comment below and tell me what moment in your life made you reclaim your power. Subscribe for more real stories of strength, survival, and second chances. Like this video if you believe women deserve to be heard. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a story that might just change your life. From one survivor to another, I see you, I believe you, and I'm rooting for you. Until next time, Grandma Margaret.